As we go forward, let's see what works, what is operational, and what needs other attention. Others have suggested a minimum income for a guaranteed income for people. Is that worthy of attention now? Perhaps so.
Did you hear that? House Speaker Nancy Pelosi suggesting guaranteed income amid the pandemic. Is she focusing more on government handouts instead of getting Americans back to work? Here with reaction is senior fellow at the National Taxpayers Union, Mattie Duppler. Mattie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Okay, so there she was talking about, some have suggested maybe we examine a guaranteed income where, over the last year or so we've heard about universal basic income and things like that, where everybody gets a check from the government. But isn't this the time to, and the White House yesterday suggested that more stimulus for individuals is on the way in the form of perhaps a check. But is now the time to do some sort of guaranteed income rather than just simply get us through this crisis?
Right. You bring up an excellent point, which is that we are in unprecedented times. It requires an unprecedented policy response. However, at a time when you've got 32 million small businesses trying to figure out how they're going to get back online after the pandemic is contained, I can't imagine how tone deaf it is to be talking about paying people to stay home and not work. Usually people who are saying that a universal basic income is a good idea are suggesting it because they think it should be replacing our other social safety programs. Nancy Pelosi isn't saying that. She's saying we should consider an income on top of the welfare programs we already have in place. That would create massive distortions, particularly at a time when businesses need to hire these workers back, and we need to get people back online and get them working and get the economy moving again.
Yeah, Mattie, I have read so much about this morning after her comments. And what's interesting is some people have suggested, why don't we get rid of welfare as we know it, any sort of welfare payments to individuals, and instead do this. But then you look at some of the suggestions. I saw one Congress person suggested that the federal government cover the wages of employees up to $100,000. And that just brings the question, where's that money going to come from? I know right now we're just inventing the money to get us through this crisis. But if we start it now, it's going to be hard to get the horse back in the barn.
That's exactly right. And listen, I think we should have a robust social safety net exactly for instances like what we're experiencing right now. However, a universal basic income is something that's supposed to get rid of all the deficiencies in the federal government and getting those checks out the door and how difficult the administration is. Having a UBI system in place, however, does the one thing that you don't want in a productive economy. It pays people not to work. And there are countries that have tried this. Finland has tried this. Cities in California and Canada have tried this. All of them found the same thing, that it is not particularly effective because it doesn't get people out of the morass of government support and back into work.
Do you think that, we've heard a lot about it on the campaign trail, particularly Andrew Yang talking about universal basic income over the last year. Do you think they think that it is really a viable thing that the United States could do, or is it just one of those things that we hear a lot of in a campaign year where they'll be able to make the case, hey, I was fighting for you. I tried to get you a basic guaranteed income, but those darn Republicans wouldn't let us.
Well, this is the remarkable thing about Nancy Pelosi talking about this at a time when the idea has already been tested with Democratic voters. Listen, if this was popular with Democratic voters, Andrew Yang would be the nominee for the Democratic primary. Instead, he dropped out without only getting a couple percentage points of support from Democratic voters. It's obvious that this is an idea that even for Democrats is not very palatable. And for Nancy Pelosi to be bringing it up now when we're trying to talk about getting people back to work, I think it illustrates just how far Democrats are from the economic realities facing the country right now.
Well, we just heard a soundbite from Hillary Clinton in the last half hour where she was talking about pushing health care justice because you never want to let a crisis go to waste, she said, as you know. All right. Mattie, thank you very much for joining us today on this Wednesday.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you.
All right.